There you are. How's it
How's it
going,
going?
Mr. Kaufman?
Oh, it's going. I just normal technical issues. It's
Well, it's
a thing.
Friday, fun day once again. The sun is shining, so it's all good. It's all good out there. How are you doing this fine Friday?
I'm I'm freezing. Uh, I am. It's snowed what 2, 3 times here now. I think at least I know at least twice, maybe a third, and I am completely done with it. I am so over it already. I just can't deal with the cold anymore. I guess it's just the age thing popping in. I just can't. It's not my thing anymore, man. I need to be warm.
I hear you.
So scratch that idea I had last week about moving to Alaska.
Ah,
That's no longer on the plate. It's no longer on the table.
well, we need to visit first. We need to visit Alaska and see maybe
Yeah.
first. But what? Oh, well, welcome. I guess I'll do. So, welcome to the podcast for today. What are we going to be talking about today, Mr. Kaufman?
Well, everyone in this business or anyone who gets into this business is going to make mistakes. It is inevitable. It will happen. Uh, you know, our job, I guess, as coaches, is to try to ensure that those folks who get into this business experience as few of those mistakes as possible. Although it's not, nothing is. You're going to make mistakes, and some of you are going to make some pretty grave mistakes. And so, what we're going to talk about today are, it's titled "Real Estate Deals Gone Wrong." Should be a little more granular than that, because I'm going to talk about some specifics. Just have a general discussion about some of the mistakes that I've made and some of the mistakes that you've made. So we're calling this "Real Estate Deals Gone Wrong: Lessons from the Trenches." I love that title. It's a good one
Yeah, that's a good one.
because
So,
this is such an
real
easy topic.
deals.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're not gonna make this. We're not gonna make this up. Like this is real shit. Like, I mean, investing. If we go back, right? Anytime you use the word investing, there's always risk. Like we've said that. I don't know what 100 times in the podcast, probably to this point or whatever. Right? The goal is
Yeah,
to
that's
limit,
all investing.
to
That's no
limit.
matter
Yeah,
what. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, real estate included too. So you got to try to limit that. So we're just going to talk about myself. Like we're human, right? Not every deal gets you the $100,000 payday, despite what the gurus tell you. That's a bunch of bullshit. By the like, let's just get that out in the open right now. When the gurus say, "Oh well, we'll come into our coaching program and you're going to get," I mean, you'll have $100,000 in the bank in 6 months. Bullshit. Come
Yeah.
on, man.
Yeah, it's very I don't know. I've been, like we've said before, I've been to a million and one seminars, and they've got a job to do. They're marketers for the most part. Not unlike some of the stuff that we do. You have to market your business, but some of it is just crazy. Like it's just unrealistic, and it just I get it. You got to hype the people up. You've got to make them. You've got to get them into buying mode. And that's really what they're doing. And unfortunately, there's a lot of false promises in this business, and an extremely low barrier to entry. And so, you just got to be super careful with who you're dealing with. And another thing I would like to get out there is that, like a lot of these gurus that you see out there that are talking. I mean, they've got YouTube channels that are just I mean, there's thousands of videos on these YouTube channels. There's no possible way, in my mind. Maybe I'm just getting old. I don't know, but there's no possible way that everybody can know everything about everything. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
or they can implement everything that they've ever read about or what have you. So I don't know. I'm a little disgruntled today, I suppose. I guess. Am I really lagging behind here?
you're a little, yes, you're lagging a little behind too. But if we could just digress for a moment
Mhm.
and make sure that we hit that point home, right? We right, the focus of Sub2 Empire is creative deals, right? Buying creatively, selling creatively. Like that's the railroad tracks, right? That's the niche. Like we don't purport to be rehab experts. We don't purport to be, retail office space experts. That's not what that's not what our business is, right? So we like to stay in the lane. And if you see a guru, like I like we've both seen many of them, if you see a guru that that's talking expert and all that stuff, like I'm not sure I'm buying that, right? I'm not sure
Yeah.
I'm believing that. So yeah, I just want to make sure that's a very good point, by the way. Like we kind of try to stay in our lane, right? Do we do rehabs? Of course, but we're not flipping 100 houses a year like the rehab experts are,
Yeah.
right? So
One of my favorite things to say is, when we're talking about wholesaling is we're not wholesalers, but we do wholesale. It's a byproduct of what we do and what most real estate investors do, but it's not our primary focus. So yeah, let's go over. I don't know. Honestly, this is such an easy topic for me to talk about. Like I don't know if you want to go first, if you want me to go first, but
well,
um,
we've just got some bullet points, and then we're just going to try, like, if you don't mind, maybe we can highlight the bullet points with our real case studies as we go through here. So I'll go first on the first bullet point in here, the checkbox, whatever you want to call it, right? Is how do you ensure, or how do you mitigate the risk of sellers coming back on you from the perspective of legal action, like especially with sub two deals, like that's kind of our lane, right? The sub two deals. Well, I'll go first because this is right in my wheelhouse, right? It's just like, folks, I can't stress enough. The number one thing that you can do to avoid getting dragged in court for any reason is to have good paperwork and know what's in your damn paperwork. Know what's in your contracts. CYA, cover your assets. It starts with your paperwork. And our sub two deals, right? Going back to our sub two deals, like, we have a whole package. We call it the sub two package, right? The complete sub two document package. It's CYA. That's why it's out there. That's why it's designed.
yep. And by the way, there is no piece of paper that's going to prevent you from going to court. Well, it could prevent you,
No, in
but
a worst case scenario, right? You can,
yeah.
yes,
But if
absolutely.
you get there, if you are dragged there, then 100%. Like you've got to have solid paperwork. And our sub two documents package is tried and true. It's been tested. It's been tested through a couple of seller bankruptcies, all kinds of stuff. It's been very well vetted. But I want to add on to this topic, to this bullet point. And from my point of view, if we back this up to long before we've bought the property or even have the property under contract, I think from my point of view, the number one way to avoid legal action from litigious sellers is to not do a deal with a litigious seller ever.
Well, right.
Like get just not even, you don't even have to get to the contract. This whole vetting process starts when you show up for your seller appointment. That's when this starts. So I'll just give you a couple of examples. One of those was had a seller appointment, was talking to the seller, and we were building great rapport. This was I say a probate deal. It was more of an inheritance deal. This property didn't have to go through probate. And I'm not kidding. It wasn't even maybe 10 minutes into the conversation. We hadn't come to any kind of agreements or anything. And she was already talking about that her uncle was an attorney, and, just trying to rattle me, is what she was doing. She's like, automatically it's, if you screw me over, I'm going to an attorney type of thing. And immediately that just disqualifies that person for me. I don't know if they're telling you up front that they're litigious, they're probably litigious, more than likely. So yeah, I've got a specific story for that one though. I mean, we can come back to it. I do want to talk about this though, because it's a life lesson. It's a great story.
Go ahead. No, go ahead right now.
Okay. All right. Well, so I bought this property subject to. This was early on. I mean, this was 2015, 16, something like that. And the lady, unfortunately, I mean, when I met her, I'm not gonna name names, but when I met this person, her house was in foreclosure, and I kind of joke around and say, you know, when I met her, she was having trouble feeding herself. Like, I mean, it was a real problem. She had this job lined up in, and I might be exaggerating a little bit there. I'm just gonna put it out there that I might be exaggerating, but she was in a really bad way. She had it's either a friend or a relative that lived in Florida, and that relative or friend had lined up a job for her, but she had no way to pay, you know, to move all of her stuff down to Florida. So as part of the deal, I offered to pay for her to move to Florida, and then I bought her house subject to. So I buy it subject to, and I was young. I was just really starting to establish the systems. It was nothing like what we have today. It was literally just, I was taking properties subject to via quit claim deed, no title searches, you know, just really, really living it up, man. I was like, I mean, you talk about, I can't believe I did it.
Yeah, going gangbusters.
Yeah. So, but nevertheless, I'm getting it done. So I buy this house subject to, and I bought it on it was right at the end of the month, like 2 days prior to the first of the month. So immediately I start marketing for a buyer for it. And I was doing a lot of wholesaling at the time. So I start marketing for a buyer for this thing, not really knowing the proper way to do this. But I find this buyer immediately. And we set a closing date for 2 weeks out. So I honestly cannot tell you why I did this, but what's the first of the month? First of the month is when all the payments are due. That's when mortgages are due. Well, on the 16th of the month, that's when that's the time limit, the end of the grace period. You've got the 1st to the 15th. So I was thinking, and this thing was supposed to close on the 14th or 15th, one of those 2 days. And so in my mind, I'm just like, I'll just let that payment, I'll let it ride. And my buyer will end up paying off the whole balance on the 15th. No big deal, right? At least in my mind, that's what I thought. No big deal. It quickly became a very big deal. Because it was a stupid mistake. It was just a dumb mistake. We always talk about, you know, you have to make these payments. If you're committed to doing it, you've got to make these payments. And I violated that rule. In fact, that wasn't even really a rule of mine, I guess, back then. But this lesson is what taught me that needs to be a permanent, just a permanent thought, a permanent fixture in your business. If you're going to buy property subject to, you got to make these payments. You have to. Yep. And lo and behold, my buyer on literally almost at the closing table, he decided to back out. And that payment did not get made. It was late. Now, did that damage her, you know, credit or anything like that? No, she was totally fine. But what it did damage was my reputation. It was, and I'll tell you this is 2025 now. The last time I heard from this woman was about 6 months ago. And she has been in my ear for the past 8 years. And I can't say that I blame her. I don't blame her. Because this was 100% my fault, my mistake. But I wish that house has long since been sold and somebody else owns it now. But that one silly mistake that I made caused me years and years and years of pain. It was so dumb. I don't know why I did it.
And
So
let's go back and make sure that we understand it. So the payment was made, actually, that the subject to was made. It just happened to be late. So you
correct.
probably made it, like, we'll just make it up. You made it. We made the payment on the 20th, and technically it was late on the 16th.
Yeah,
Right. Or
I
whatever,
made it on the
the date
6th.
was.
As soon as it was late, I got a phone call. She was on the phone to me.
Oh,
She's, she still had, and this is another thing, she still had the login for the mortgage and everything, which,
oh
you
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
nevertheless, none of that was her fault. Zero of that was her fault. It was 100% me. But yes, you're right. Payment was made. It was late. It's not worth reporting on a credit file or anything.
Right.
But
Right. It did
nevertheless,
not damage her in any way. You're correct.
it damaged her in the sense of, she could no longer trust me.
Well, right.
And
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
You were damaged. That's correct. But
Yeah.
she was not damaged from
Correct. Yeah. Just a stupid mistake. So yeah, I mean, I guess if going back to hitting on that, I have been dealing with the threat of legal action for a long, long time. And if I look back at the very beginning of it, she happened to be a former St. Louis City cop who this could have turned south really quickly.
Yeah, I was gonna say you could have had your kneecaps broken.
Yeah, but if I look back to the very beginning, not only did she bring that up, but she also talked about attorneys, about bringing attorneys in, and had I not established this rule that I have now, I might have had a few more instances of this happening. Although now I will make payments. I will never miss a payment ever. So anyway, that's my story. Kind of in short, if you want to avoid legal issues with sellers, then don't do deals with litigious sellers. It's that simple.
So two items on that too. But if that feeling in your gut is telling you something's off, walk away.
Yeah.
Listen to your gut.
That's true. That is very
to
true.
your gut, right? So that'll save you a long time. But staying on the paperwork, though, let's shift to, because we have another bullet point is specifically about having a power of attorney. So why is a power of attorney, right? That specific document in deals. Why is that power of attorney important?
Well, the power of attorney, first of all, sellers get freaked out when you start talking legalese to them.
Yeah.
And when you say, you say, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, part of this process is I'm going to get a legal power of attorney from you. And immediately you can almost sense it. They're just like, oh, I'm not really sure I want to give you, power of attorney over my life. So what we're talking about here we're talking about a limited power of attorney.
Yeah.
Limited power of attorney can be limited to any one aspect of one's life. Really, it could be financial. It could be, managing like one particular asset. It can be many different things. In our case, our limited power of attorney was limited to the loan, is limited to the loan that the lender has, that the borrower has from a bank. So in that sense, all that we can do, what it does is it gives us permission as attorneys in fact to speak with the lender about anything that has to do with that loan. As an attorney in fact, you can even request loan modifications. You can do all kinds of you can do anything that the seller would be or the borrower would be able to do. That is now placed. That privilege is now given to you. And so it's hugely important, because there are definitely going to be times where you're going to have to pick up the phone and you're going to have to contact the lender or whoever's servicing that note, and you're going to have to talk to them about this loan. I mean, there's periodically throughout the year, every once a year, you have an escrow reevaluation. And if you find mistakes in that escrow evaluation or anything like that, you got to pick up the phone and talk to the lender. If there's just think of any reason why you would ever need to pick up a phone. There's something wrong with the statement, or there's something going on with maybe you're not receiving the mail, whatever it might be. A limited power of attorney gives you the ability to pick up the lender and remedy that. It will allow you to and you can speak to them as if you're the actual borrower.
Yep.
And by the way, that is put on file with them. I always say that the limited power of attorney is the most important document that you have. Out of all of the closing documents you're going to have on any subject to deal. And like we send a whole package into our title company. That one document is the most important one that you can have. So as soon as that has signatures notarized on it and is given back to you, you want the hard copy, you want the original copy back. For me, what I do, first thing is I come home and I scan all of those documents. And then a lot of people don't do this, but I like to send that to the lender straight away. And most of these lenders have an online portal where you can just upload it into the portal. I know Mr. Cooper's been really, really good about that. They've got a great portal, by the way.
Yes, they are very easy to navigate. Online. Yeah. Yes, you're correct.
So, and then I keep that hard copy. I have the copy in a Google Drive, and the lender has a copy, because a lot of times those lenders that stuff will magically disappear.
Yes, so it'll disappear.
And a funny little thing. When I first started doing this, I had one of the lenders I was dealing with, I think it was Penny Mac at the time. They wanted you to fax this to them. And this is not that long ago. This is within 10 years ago. They wanted you to fax it. And so I always had, I've gotten rid of it since, but I always had a little Magic Jack. You remember the Magic Jack?
Yes. Yeah.
Plug it into to your internet, your router. And I would run a cable from my printer.
Yeah.
My printer, and then my printer would dial out, and I would be able to send faxes. So for the longest time, I probably got rid of the fax maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago now. But I just thought it was funny that here we are, 2025. We got AI. We've got Skynet, as you call it.
Skynet is in house. Yes, right.
We're still sending faxes. It's great.
Just one other item on the power of attorney too. We actually recommend on the power of attorney that your power of attorney be for that property, right? You mentioned specifically for the lender, but sometimes you need to talk with the HOA. Sometimes you need to there's all kinds of different reasons why so we recommend having the limited power of attorney for all things related to the property, right? Sometimes utility companies give you a damn hassle about things too. So that's why you do. But specifically, you need it for the lender. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's absolutely the most important piece to this puzzle is having power of attorney, which kind of leads me into I don't know what our next bullet point is here. Let me look. Yeah, it's that's a due diligence thing.
Yeah.
But I have another deal that I did that kind of piggybacks off of what you're just talking about. It was another subject to deal that was an inheritance deal, just like the first one I talked to you about.
Yeah.
And in this case, again, I was trying to wholesale this thing. That was kind of my big thing back then, was trying to find the best way to wholesale subject to deeds, like package it up for an investor and then sell the whole thing off to an investor. And we do that totally different today. But back then it was literally just either closing on it as a subject to deal and then selling them the deal. So it would be just your normal kind of closing, or it would be a signing, just like you would assign a purchase agreement. Well, this one I happened to close on, and not really understanding it myself as thoroughly as I do today. I just kind of assumed that this investor that I was selling it to would just kind of pick up the pieces and just start running with it. So it was about a year later after I sold this thing to him. He bought it. I did okay. I got an assignment fee out of it, and probably opened myself up to plenty of lawsuits.
Yes, instead of novating it, that's a whole separate podcast.
So anyway, I just for some reason I was going through my Google Drive, and I like to organize that stuff from time to time. I like to have all caps. That's just the way.
Yes, you
Weird,
do. Indeed,
but
you do.
I like it that way. And you're going to leave me
Yeah.
alone about it. But I go back and I find this folder of this property, and I was like, wonder what he did to that, because I never went back and checked. I wonder if he got it, fixed it up, he turned it into a rental. I go back and look out on Zillow, and it's in foreclosure.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So now there's a double-edged sword there, because buying those properties in inherited situations or probate properties, it's kind of the best of both worlds. I mean, obviously you're not. I don't want to sound crude and say that obviously somebody's passed away, somebody's upset about that. There's family members. It's very emotional. But from an investment standpoint, it's one of the best deals that you can do, because something happens to you or your business, nobody really gets hurt. Bank gets the property back. You might lose the property. There's no more. There can't be any more repercussions on the borrower. So the borrower is no longer with us. So they are really good deals to do. They generally make sense, if the numbers work. So that's where I lucked out in that one, was in that it was a probate deal, and that could have been really disastrous. I mean, it could have been the worst. It could have been the worst possible situation had he stopped making. And what it was he didn't know how to deal with with talking with the lender, and he just didn't know the inner workings of the subject to deal.
Right.
And so, but then that also helped me, because now I'm realizing, well, I've got to get better about teaching these. I've got to get better about showing these people how to do this, and ultimately, that's how I do deals today. But just another huge lesson. It's just another one of those things to pack away in your tool belt, and or either that or shove it deep down into the dark recesses of Yeah.
Shove it down. That's right.
Yeah. So anyway, that was just another little quick story. And this is, I'm not I've told you I dropped out of college, so I'm not I'm not an academic type of dude. I'm a doer, and so.
Well, you learned from the school of hard knocks.
Yeah, well, that's what I say. I consider that. I've always said this. I consider these things that I've learned. It is my college education. It is my graduate school. That's what it is.
That's right.
Yeah.
So let's go to the due diligence. And so for the sake of this podcast, I'd like to just kind of clarify due diligence. Right? There's the due diligence on the property. Like, you got to look and inspect it. Does the foundation crack? Like, we just walked away from on the surface what was a very nice little profitable deal on a townhouse, because the damn foundation was shifting, dropped an inch from the front to the back. So it's like, that seems like a little too much risk. Like, how are we going to be able to resell that? So there's the due diligence on the property. We've talked about that before. There's a whole nother podcast on our due diligence checklists in there too. So of course you need to do that. We just talked about the due diligence of vetting the seller, right? That's really what we talked about before, is that, you have to fill the gap. You have to be transparent and honest with the seller. And by the way, vet the seller. Go to, at least here in Missouri, we've got a public system where you can access the courts. So you can see whether that person's been litigious or not litigious, or whatever the case may be. Like, you have to do your due diligence on the sellers, right? So there's lots of levels of due diligence. Also, evaluating the property, right? Evaluating the property is all part of the due diligence process. Does the deal make sense? And we've talked about this before, Jeff, right? Like, analysis paralysis. Like, I'm so guilty, especially at the beginning. 25 years ago now. 25 years ago at the beginning of the journey, I was just like, I'm going to make sure I know every number down to the penny. And as I'm spending a week figuring out every number, evaluating every number down the penny, deal's gone. So
yeah.
So you got to keep but you need to know what you're doing, right, to evaluate the deals with your due diligence. But I'd like to spend maybe I'll go with one of my stories. Like, let's talk about due diligence of your buy and hold properties. Like, let's not forget about that. Like you mentioned this, you checked on this property that you had assigned, the sub-2 deal that you had assigned, and you saw that it was in foreclosure. In other words, you followed up, right? You were doing some due diligence on, okay, what happened with this deal. But what happens if you have a rental property, or what happens if you have a property and you seller finance it, like we would teach you to do, right? Maybe on a contract, on an agreement for deed that we talked about in the previous episode. What are you going to do? I can't stress this enough. I'll highlight this with a story here in a second. I can't stress this enough, especially if it's straight rental property. Have annual inspections, at least annual inspections. In fact, my agreements have the right for me to enter the property with 24 hours of notice for any reason, really. But inspect your properties, right? Don't take it for granted because your tenant's been there for, let's see, this tenant was there for, was it 8 years? 7 or 8 years, paying on time every month, blah, blah, blah. Like, you got to get into the properties. Like, those are your properties, legally titled, even if you're doing it on a contract for deed, legally titled, man. Do your due diligence and check up on your properties. So we had a property down in very nice, we call it South St. Louis County, right? The 63129 area, right? It's a very nice area, very popular, all of that. And we had a tenant there, was a rental property. So let me just back this up. This property was one of the first things I ever purchased, and I did it for a tax write-off, right? It was not a cash flowing property. It was not a cash flowing property. Well, Ken, why in the hell would you buy something that's not cash flowing? For the tax write-off.
Yeah,
like
California is full. Yeah,
right?
all of the higher dollar areas, California is full of tax speculators.
Yeah.
That's what we ultimately call them. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
So I knew that going in. So this was not going to be a cash flowing property, but it was a speculative property on the resale because there was development coming down the street, right? Coming down the main artery that the property was on. It was coming, like you could see it coming south, right? It was coming south right down, and it was like, okay, so when we sell this property later to a developer who's going to knock it down and put houses here, that's when we're going to capture that, because it was a negative cash flow a month just on a straight rental. It was like, we were fine with that up until then. Well, that never materialized, right? It never materialized. We actually bought the property in 2004. Well, you know what happened from 08 to 11, right? Shit went sideways, and then we couldn't get rid of it for sure. So we just had to keep hanging on to it. Well, we put a tenant in there that was there for, I'd have to go back and look, 7, 8 years, right? And so we got to the point where we were like, we just need to sell the property. We offered to make the tenants the homeowners, right? We offered to do that. They couldn't pull it off at the time. Their son had unfortunately had cancer. There's a lot of medical bills, all this stuff. It was like, okay, well, we're going to just sell the property. Well, that spooked them pretty well, I guess, because ultimately they just left and ghosted us, like literally ghosted us. We didn't have a key. They had changed the locks at some point in the 7 or 8 years that they were there. Couldn't get in. Had to break in our own property, right? And so once we finally get in and take a look at the property, we finally see that the sunroom was a room that had sun, was up over the garage, the tuck under garage in there too. Probably the best room of the house. It was 100% hardwood floors everywhere in the house, and it was hardwood paneling. One of those with a sunroom and all that stuff, beautiful room. Well, they thought that it would just be fine to change the sunroom into the pet's litter box.
I thought you were going to say a grow house.
That would have been better.
Yeah.
But yes, no, and it was so bad that it actually seeped under the floorboards, and the garage was underneath it, and you can see the urine line underneath all the way down through the garage and all of that too. Why did that happen, you say, Ken? We'll say, well, we had been in there a few times. Now, I will say this. We had been in there a few times doing some repairs and everything, but it was not like that, right? So at some point in the, I'll just say 4 or 5 years that we had never bothered to check on it, right? That they just decided to to not let the dogs out to go to the bathroom. Seems normal, right? Perfectly normal.
Man, I'll tell you what too. There's nothing worse. A lot of people talk about cats, and cats smell bad. But if you've got a really bad infestation of, if people are if in that scenario, like what you're talking about, that is a that is the most possible worst smell ever.
Oh,
It is awful,
it was
awful.
bad. And I just a little aside to go on that too. My wife, if anybody's watching this, my wife, Christina's her name. My wife, Christina, is tough as friggin' nails. She turned right around and walked out and said, I can't do that.
Yeah,
That's how bad that was. I mean, it was knock you down
yeah.
bad. You're correct. And the other thing I learned about that too, let's go to a little bit of size. So you have insurance, right? Oh, it can't be that bad, right? Like it's insurance. Like, of course we had a landlord policy, Mr. Kaufman. Like, who would have a rental policy? Who would have a rental property and not have it insured as a landlord policy? You know what? The landlord policy covers vandalism. It covers vandalisms. So if they had spray painted the walls, F you, and put holes and kicked the doors in or ripped the doors off or whatever, I would have been covered. But because they knowingly allowed the pets to use the interior of the house as a litter box, they refused to classify that as vandalism and would not cover it. Ken had to take a loss on that property, right? Like it was already negative from the beginning. now, now it was like we sold it. You have to turn lemonades, right? You have to squeeze your lemons sometimes too. We as is sold that, brother. As is sold that. Now we had to bring money to closing. Like that was not a great deal, right? We had to bring money to closing. But again, we purchased it knowing that it was not going to be a positive cash flow situation. So it was a little different scenario going in. But
Hey, is that the one that I sent my buddy down to look at?
I think probably so. Down there on Telegraph Road, yeah.
Okay, I was just curious. I didn't know if he was the buyer on that or not.
Yeah, I think, man, I was getting everybody I could down there. Ultimately, we did sell that to a guy, and he's done a beautiful job. When we go down there and look at other properties, I go by there all the time just to see how he's done a really nice job of updating the property too.
Yeah,
So,
cool.
yeah.
Oh man, that makes my
Due
stomach turn.
diligence. It doesn't stop after you close on the property. Does not stop after you close on the property. Let's just say that, right?
Yeah, yeah. Good point. Good point. All right. All right, what's next here?
Creative financing challenges too. We've been talking about that as we've been going through here. Um, man, it's just about your paperwork, right? One of the things too is let's just reiterate a couple of things. First, let's have great paperwork, right? Especially subject to deals. We already have the subject to package, but also too think about how you take title to the property, like as Jeff mentions all the time too. Love the land trust, right? Putting the property in a trust mitigates a lot of issues for you right from the beginning. Yeah. Right from the beginning, especially on a subject to deal where we were talking about the lenders and the power of attorney and all that stuff too. It all dovetails beautifully together to help CYA yourself too.
Yeah. Do we have time for a little story? Another little story?
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%.
So
real guys doing real deals. That's what maybe we should have titled the podcast episode like that.
Well, I'm sick of talking about this one, to be very honest with you. But you have intimate knowledge of this as well. If you guys are out here after you're done watching here, guys, if you're joining us from YouTube, go out there and search YouTube for the following. Use the following search terms. Just plug in St. Louis serial squatters.
Yep.
All right. There's a whole news story, although they didn't quite get the news story 100% correct. And I understand they've got 6 minutes to put this whole thing together and tell this entire story, so they're bound to miss a lot of details. But one of the mistakes that I made, and you'll see it on that story, is I'm just going to throw it out there. I allowed someone to take early possession of a property I was selling. Oh. Now, how that went about and how that happened is what you don't hear in the news story. And essentially what had happened was I was doing a rehab. I had 2 crews of guys going at that time. There was a total of 7 or 8 guys that I was running between these rehab properties. This one we picked up in late 2018, and was having it wrapped up right around April 2019. And beautiful house, probably one of the. I mean, it was just a really really nicely finished house. It was very tasteful.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember walking in that
Yep.
bathroom. That
Yeah,
bathroom.
it was. Yes, you did. It was a nice job. Yes.
Very, very beautiful.
Yep.
Well, this guy shows up at my flip. I was over there one day dropping off some supplies, and this guy shows up and he's interested in the house. He sees we're working on it. We still have the dumpster in the driveway, and essentially, I guess he just kept track. I told him, it's like, yeah, it's not ready. We're not ready to sell it yet. Not ready to even accept any offers on it yet. Come back in June and we'll talk. We'll see, you can see where it's at. I'll walk you through it again. Literally, this guy, he must have put up cameras in the neighborhood or something, because I was over there with my guys. We were literally sweeping up the last pile of dust, off the floors, off the 100% brand new, finished wood. I mean, this place was nice.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So he shows up on that day, and I walk him through this property. Well, he loved it. Anybody that walked that house, after this was all said and done, that house sold in 2 days. It was such a nice place, and he made a full price offer on it. And in my mind, I'm like, are you kidding? Full price, full asking. I don't have to pay an agent. I don't have to pay all these other closing costs and associated closing costs. And I was like, for sure, let's sign it up. So he signed it up that day and put a contract on it. We had a closing that was pushed out for. Our closing was out 30 days. Back then you could do 30 days. Now it seems like it's all 45 days.
Yeah.
But we get to, everything seems to be going good. He puts earnest money in the bank, or I'm sorry, with escrow, opens escrow, puts earnest money down, and tells me that he calls me up a week prior to the closing date. Oh, let me back up. Anytime I ever sell direct to seller now, I always ask to speak to their lender. Always. You just have to do that. That is a little bit of a nugget for people out there. It doesn't seem like, seems like a trivial thing, but most people would take for granted that if somebody showed up with a pre-approval letter, that they're ready to go. But it's not true at all. So always ask to speak to the lender. So I was speaking with the lender. The lender says to me that, yes, this person they're good to go. They're ready to close, but they have this Social Security lien that they've got to get released. We're waiting on a release from the Social Security Administration. I said, okay, I mean, that's fine. Fast forward to a week before closing, I get a call from the quote buyer that they still had not received that release for the Social Security lien. And then he proceeds to ask me, hey, I've already told he says, this is him talking. He said, I already told my apartment complex that I'm moving out on this next weekend. Can I take early possession of your property? And so you can probably already guess where this is going, but I have a little twist that I'll throw in here, because I immediately told him no. I knew that was a no-no. I knew that was a sign. And so I picked up the phone and I called his lender, his quote lender again, and his lender, very well-known lender. I still see him around today. It's a mortgage company, not a real lender. It's a mortgage company. And he says, yeah, they're good to go. We're just waiting on this lien release. I said, okay. So I called the buyer back and I said, I can't let you in the house, but what I can do is I can write you a lease. Because in my mind, I was thinking, well, a lease is at least I have a remedy if something bad goes down. Well, that's really all that they needed. They signed the lease. It was a 30-day lease, and that was all they needed. They, from that point on, I never saw another dime. Um, they squatted in there, and by the way, if you want to talk about professional squatters, these folks, I was their 17th person that they've done this to consecutively. It was insane, and I could literally talk for. I mean, if any of you are here in St. Louis, you want to go talk about this, let's go have a beer or 20, because it's a very long.
That's right. It's a beer.
So,
Yeah.
I guess really it all kind of worked out in the end. Actually, Ken was one of my lenders on that deal. One of my private lenders. That's how we actually met, was through that deal. And
Yep.
I had to sit down and have this conversation with you about, man.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know if you're going to get paid back, man. It was so stressful.
Yeah. Oh, I saw the look on your face. I knew it was. I was like, oh shit, this isn't
Yeah.
gonna be good. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I had 2 crews of guys to pay. I had all these short-term construction loans that were due, private loans, and I had really, really screwed things up. I made a huge mistake, and those folks were in my house for almost a year. They were true professionals. I went to 2 trials. Now, I'm not talking about a hearing and then another hearing. I went to 2 trials. These people were true professionals. 2 trials, and I was fine. I finally got the judgment after the second trial, and then it still took another 45 days to get them out. It was crazy, absolutely insane. So the moral of this story is, don't ever allow anyone in your property, inside your property, unless you accompany them in and accompany them back out, or you have a valid 6-month lease, or I'm sorry, a valid lease or sale, well, in our case, be contract for deed. Unless that's valid, everything, you've done all your due diligence, they've been vetted, they have cash, they have down payment money actually shows up into the account that it needs to show up in. Just do not ever allow someone in your property. That is my worldly advice to all the aspiring real estate investors out there.
That's a good one. I've got. Do we have time? Maybe time for one more story. I got. It goes along with the last
Yep.
bullet point there. Navigate unexpected challenges and creative
Yeah.
financing. So another quick story. So when I first got married, right, in 2001, when my wife and I bought our first property together, it was on a street called Castlewood Court, and it was the first house we ever bought, and we kept the house. When we moved from there, it was in Columbia, Missouri. When we moved from there, we kept the house. That's one of the ways we acquired. Every time we moved, we just kept the previous house and made it a rental. So, and we moved a lot, by the way, like a lot. So that's a strategy, right? Another pro tip there: when you don't sell your house, just make it a rental. And so ultimately, we had a tenant in there, and he wanted to ultimately buy the place. It was like, okay, great. See, I was doing creative stuff back then. I didn't even know what the hell it was. They didn't even know what the word creative and real estate weren't even in the same sentence at the time. It was like, okay, but in order for him to make it work, he got a first mortgage, went qualified, but I had to take back, like, he didn't have enough of the 20% down, so I took back. So I did a seller carryback, a partial seller carryback, right? So we turned our tenant into the owner of that. Well, ultimately, he was an electrician, and he took over, supposedly, I don't know all the details about it, but I'll just say he took over operating one of the electrician's business, right? He took over there, bought out the other owners, or whatever happened, supposedly. Like, I don't know any of this for a fact, supposedly. Well, ultimately, he's a complete moron and can't run the business, right? Maybe he was a good electrician, but a bad business owner. So that all goes belly up, and he stops paying. So the property goes into foreclosure. Well, now I have a second on it, right? So this is the creative piece. So what happens now? Because there's a first on it. Well, also too, like, when you go and look at the title on it, we now have IRS tax liens totaling over $400,000 on the property. I'll never forget that. You probably should have taken a photo of my face when I saw that on there too. Two different tax liens, IRS tax liens on the property. And the property's only worth at the time $175,000, right? So the tax liens are never going to get paid off from the property. I mean, they just do it just so that they can encumber the property, right? It's like, oh shit, well, what's going to happen? Well, ultimately, we get the property back from foreclosure. Like we take the property back. We had to get rid of those IRS tax liens, right? So how do you do that? Like the IRS is just going to do that? Yeah, they did. It was like, here's the situation. They're gone out of the property. It's in foreclosure. I want to be the property owner again. I was the previous property owner. I still had an interest in the property, right, as the second lien holder. Well, I guess third, right? Our IRS, by the way, is a super lien. An IRS lien supersedes every other lien known to man, right? And maybe God, I'm not sure, but either way, right? It's a super lien. And so I just called the IRS and was like, they're gone. The property's only worth like $175,000. Like, you're never going to get paid off anyway. And can you attach the lien to these people? Like, I even had their forwarding address. Like, I tracked them down. I was like, here's where they are. Go get them. And they did. I shit you not. Within a week, the IRS liens were released off the property.
Wow.
I never thought that would happen. It was like, great. But like you said, you got to be in contact with the first lender. We got that property back, and it was a rental for us for many a year until we sold it off.
A lot of people don't realize that now an IRS lien is probably a little. It's just it is. It's way more serious than any of these other smaller liens.
Yeah.
But I'll buy I have bought houses with liens on them. And I don't know that I would have to have that negotiated prior to closing on an IRS lien for sure. But everyone's terrified of these liens. Liens are an opportunity. They're an opportunity for. I mean, in your case, it wasn't an opportunity. You had to call and negotiate that. But in a lot of cases, when you're buying properties, particularly subject to, you're already taking over that lien, which is that loan. Other liens, smaller liens, are not only can you negotiate a better purchase price because of these liens, but you also have an opportunity to negotiate those liens down or even have them completely written off after you close. So, I wouldn't be too terrified of liens. They do present an opportunity. I think I told you about this one, but I had a property down in South Carolina, 63129 as well. And we worked on it, bought it subject to it. As it turned out, right when we purchased it from this elderly woman, she entered into a senior care facility. Long story short, they didn't really have an argument, but long story short, there was a Medicare lien placed on this property because Medicare can look back 5 years. A lot of people don't know that. There's a look back period. But Medicare placed a lien on this property for $80,000. Right, the house was only worth, like, I think at the time, I think it was only like worth 145 or something like that. Well, we found this out when we were selling it, $80,000 lien. So plenty of juice in the deal. We made, we were set to close, but not with $80,000. $80,000 would have killed us. We would have been out. I don't know. I think at the time, I think it was like $30,000 or $40,000. That was it, eaten up our entire margin. With that lien. So we called it's Missouri, I don't know what it's called, Health Net. I think it's called Health Net. They administer the Medicare program for the federal government here in Missouri. And we called them up, same thing. We told them the situation is like, hey, we want to sell this house. The previous owner is deceased, and we've got this lien now against this house. And we negotiated that from $80,000 down to $8,000.
Yep.
That was still not, it wasn't pretty. I mean, it definitely cut into our margins, but we had plenty of juice in that deal anyway. But $8,000 would have been a nice little bonus, you know. But anyway,
Oh yeah,
I just wanted to mention that about liens real quick because they do present opportunities that I don't think a lot of people think about. So
absolutely. That's another pro tip, man. We've been giving out golden nuggets all throughout the episode. That's why you got to stay with
yeah.
us, right? You got to watch the podcast and stay
Well,
with us.
really, just to
So-
sum this whole podcast up, this is as we said in the very beginning, if you are in this business for any length of time at all, you are going to have I mean, it's almost constant. I mean, there's almost constant something almost every day that needs to be resolved. And if you're the type of person that likes to work through problems and come up with solutions, particularly creative solutions, I like the creative stuff. You're probably going to do pretty well. But if you're someone who doesn't have much resiliency or you know, you don't have a lot of that kind of guttural grit and oomph, you know, this business could definitely eat you up. It is, and again, I equate that to, you know, just the incredibly low barrier to entry to get into this business. Literally anybody can get into it. So you're fighting with people who maybe sometimes don't have either the knowledge that you do, the grit that you do. And, you know, you find a lot of people that aren't coached up on how to actually run a business. And so, you know, they tend to want to piggyback, or they tend to want to kind of, I don't want to disparage the entire business, but it is true. When you have something that is, that requires, you know, very little education to get into. I mean, you can literally go out on YouTube and figure out how to wholesale houses. I mean, anybody can do that.
Yeah.
That is what I'm equating to the low barrier to entry. It is, and you just got to be careful. You've got to be on your toes because people will take advantage of you. It's inevitable in this business. So anyway, that's my fair warning. Be resilient. Be resilient. Understand, and we go back to what you talk about a lot, which is understanding what your goals are, having a ton of integrity, and refusing to work with people who don't share those same values.
Yep.
And the resiliency part becomes pretty easy if you live off of those values. If you live those values, you're going to be just fine.
Yep. And no matter what you're doing, right? Investing, and especially real estate investing, you're going to get knocked down. Expect it. Embrace up, right? That's the old adage. It's about, are you going to get back up? Well, hell yeah, I'm going to get back up.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it's been a wild trip, but I wouldn't change it for anything. In fact, I tell people a lot that despite of all the things that I don't like to blame people any longer. I look at literally everything that's happened to me has happened because of me, because I just ultimately take all the responsibility for all of it, and just makes things. If you haven't read 10X, I don't know many people that haven't read 10X, by the way, Grant Cardone's book. But when I read that book, I had just an enlightening moment where he talks about literally everything that happens to you throughout the day, throughout the month or year. If you just take ownership of every single one of those things that you think somebody else is doing to you, if you take ownership, you understand what your role in that particular situation was. It is an unbelievably liberating feeling. Like once you finally understand, you finally like, oh, okay, well, I guess I did screw that up. Now I can move on. Now I can move forward. And that's kind of where all of these lessons have really, I think, helped me out personally. So anyway, that's all I got, man. I'm not going to sit here and preach any longer.
That's what makes you a great business partner, is that you're the eternal optimist.
Oh, always.
Yeah, see, I'm not quite. See, I'm a bit more on the pessimistic.
You know,
side
I used to not be that way though. I used to
to
not be like that. I was very, very downtrodden and just not a fun person to be around. Angry all the time, but I don't know. I just don't see the point in it anymore, and I haven't for quite a while. Ever since the squatter thing, I haven't.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. You have had a different. Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
true.
Yep.
That's
I
true.
recognize my role in that. I know where I made the mistakes, and I always I've told you this before, but when it comes to things like this, I say I'm the smartest MFer in the room. Yeah. All
That's
right.
right.
That's all I got, man. You got anything else you want to talk about today?
Yep. Nope, I think that's good. We will again, we got a lot of stuff to offer there to help you out of these situations, right? To avoid the situations we talked about today, risk mitigation, all that stuff, right? That's why we do what we do. Remember the partner program's coming. It's coming. It's coming. So just stay tuned for more announcements about that. In the meantime, have a great week.